Ladies and gentlemen, this is TVP World. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and welcome aboard the Eastern Express. Tonight, we turn our gaze to the Middle East, where Russia's military presence in Syria is undergoing a significant transformation. The Kremlin is seemingly packing up its gear and saying goodbye, see you never to its Syrian adventure. But why now? And what does this mean for the region and beyond? Well, let's unpack this geopolitical suitcase together. First, let's take a look at our latest report to find out more.
Russia is withdrawing from Syria. After investing many years, hundreds of lives and millions upon millions of dollars, it has called it quits. This withdrawal is not without its issues, however. Ukrainian intelligence reports that the Russian troops still stationed in the country lack food, water and other necessities. The withdrawal also leaves many lingering questions.
The big question, if Russian military bases in Syria will exist. And the question is, in the new government of Syria, what kind of cooperation will be between this government and Russia?
For the Syrians themselves, this is a moment of celebration. Moscow, after all, was the main force propping up the regime of Bashar al-Assad. Its departure signals the final end of that era. And its effects will be far-reaching for the plans Russia has for many other regions.
If it happens, it will very seriously hinder Russian interference in the politics of African countries.
Moscow will still maintain a presence in Syria. It has evacuated only some of its diplomatic personnel, and its embassy in Damascus will remain functional.
And now, let's take a look at the issue in greater detail. Now, Russia has been entrenched in Syria since 2015, providing critical military support to the Assad regime during the Syrian civil war. They've bombed rebels, propped up Assad, and carved out a strategic foothold in the Middle East. Observers believe this signals a significant drawdown of Russian forces in Syria. Now, some might say, finally, Russia's learned that wars are expensive. But hold on, Russia isn't leaving Syria because it's out of rubles, it's leaving because it's playing the long game. After all, with this ongoing war in Ukraine and its global ambitions under strain, Russia's military is stretched thinner than an overworked IT department. But let's not take this at face value. Russia's withdrawal from Syria doesn't mean that it's abandoning the region. Far from it. Reports have emerged that Russian cargo planes, including the hefty Antonov An-124s, have been spotted at Syria's Khamenei airbase, loading up military equipment and heading out. It's like the Russian military is Marie Kondoing its Syrian operations. If it doesn't spark joy, it's getting shipped out. It's as if the script has slipped, with Assad now the guest star in Russia's ongoing geopolitical drama. So, where is all this military hardware heading? Well, satellite imagery and reports suggest that some of it is making its way to Libya's Al Jufra airbase. Well, Russian personnel are already stationed there, and Moscow had long had interest there, backing General Khalifa Haftar and the country's civil conflict. It's like, musical chairs. One conflict wins down, and Russia simply slides over to the next available war zone. Meanwhile, let's not forget that Russia's influence doesn't vanish overnight. Its military presence in Syria may be shrinking, but its strategic partnership with Iran, with Syrian loyalists, and even with militant groups are still intact. This isn't the end of Russia in the Middle East, it's just a new chapter. The Middle East is the ultimate chessboard, and Russia is making its move. Russia is redeploying its pieces across the board, perhaps to maintain its influence in the region or to support other strategic interests. For one, it signals a potential power vacuum in Syria, with various factions likely vying for control. It also raises questions about Russia's long-term strategy in the Middle East. Is this a tactical retreat, a strategic redeployment, or something else? Well, only time will tell. And now, here to shed more light on the issue is Marcin Krzyżanowski, a Middle East expert at the Jagiellonian University. Hello, sir, and welcome to Eastern Express.
Hello, and thank you for the invitation.
So today we're trying to unpack Russia's influence in the Middle East. And well, just a couple of hours before we speak, there's a new information coming out that Russia is already trying to reach out to the rebel forces that has taken over Syria. Here's my hypothesis. Let me know if it's a fair assessment. I think that At this point, Russia is not really backing one regime over another, but it just wants more stranglehold over the Middle East. Is that fair?
That's one of the possibilities. Although topping down the Assad regime was a serious blow to Russian influence in the Middle East, Russia will not let their military bases in Syria so easily. So it's trying to reach an agreement with HTS, the main rebel forces, or current Syrian government, we can say, about the status of their bases. And as Syria is still far from being a democratic country, and another regime is a state of formation, Russians still have a chance to stay in the Middle East. However, at the same time, they are built up their positions in Syria, in Libya, the part ruling by General Haftar.
Right, like I mentioned, Russians pulling out of Syria, it just means that they are now reinforcing the side of Libya. Does that also kind of signifies how desperate it is to kind of maintain its stranglehold in the Middle East?
Definitely yes. For Russia, bases in the Middle East are crucial for their force projection, especially in Africa. Russia has a very long coastal line, but very few ports in open sea. Baltic Sea and the Black Sea are, let's say, closed by the Straits of Denmark and Turkey. So it is very problematic for Russia to use them without control and without letting the whole NATO about their plans. Base in Syria was a very good safe point, and it was crucial for transport and logistics between Russia and their African bases.
Now, to say that Russian forces are spread thin is perhaps a very big understatement. Do you think that with the current events going on all over the world, Russia will still be able to maintain its foothold in the Middle East?
Russian forces, as you said, are spread thin, but still the presence in the Middle East is so important to Russian imperial policy that they will try very hardly to keep their presence in Syria, or if it will be not possible to keep them very safe there, in Libya.
Right. Can you help me understand why does Russia see kind of its force projection in the Middle East as so crucial?
First of all, it is very important for Russian propaganda. Russia is trying to position itself as the formidable adversary of United States. Russia is trying to get back to their former status of superpower. So the projection of force is crucial for that policy. Besides of that, they are actively meddling in the state of affairs of African countries like Chad, like Nigeria and Niger. So there is a necessity to transport goods and equipment to Africa, and to transport loot and minerals, especially gold from for example, Sudan, back to Russia without control.
Right. So, seeing the collapse of the Assad regime and Russians moving out, do you see a vacuum that will eventually be filled by different foreign influences in the region?
It will be hard to evict Russians totally, but if so, for sure that vacuum of power will be filled. The number one candidate to do that is Turkey, the main adversary of Russia in various regions, including currently in Syria. Turkey will be as I said, will be very happy to get rid of the Russians from Syria and to place themselves in their place. Second, of course, is ally of Russia, Iran, but as current Syrian government is rather unhappy with former Iranian influence, it will be very hard to Iran to fill those gaps after Russians by themselves.
And what do you see Russians' kind of long-term plan going to be? Do you see this as more of a strategic retreat, or do you foresee any other calculus going into this?
At the moment, it's a retreat, but not full evacuation. They consolidated their forces on the coastal bases in Maymin and Tartus. They fall back from the smaller military bases and outposts in Syria. And as long as they have a hope to keep their bases in Syria, as long as the negotiation with new government are on, they will keep formidable forces there. But meanwhile, they are trying to build up their, as I said before, their position in Libya. It means that Russia is trying to react to the new situation and to keep their bases intact, to maintain their presence, military and political presence in the Middle East, in Africa. However, at the moment, Russia is more like in defensive position and needs to react to the changing political situation without a possibility to influence that political situation.
And going back to the conversation we were having before, Russian forces are spread really thin. And of course, it has a lot to do with the war in Ukraine. Now, we're talking about potentially a peace agreement or a negotiation, diplomatic efforts being made when it comes to the Russian-Ukrainian front. Do you think that this would also have a domino effect going forward when it comes to Russia's grip in the Middle East? Whichever way this negotiation go with Ukraine, do you foresee that having an impact on this region?
Definitely, yes. If Russia had more firepower on the ground, they will have, if they had more possibility to quickly assist Assad, toppling the Assad regime with troops, the situation might be much different than now. At the moment, Russia is unable to actively change or affect the political situation in Syria due to lack of troops, lack of money, but not lack of political will. So, if Russian forces would be not busy in the Ukraine, they would be able to intervene. For example, in Syria, they would be able to support their allies in Africa and Middle East.
And do you see that these allies of Putin still have any steam left to kind of linger until perhaps after the peace negotiation with Ukraine happening? And do you think that that would give them a little bit of breathing room with Russians now having one less front to fight on?
Definitely, yes. Russia and the Russian allies are running low on steam, but still keep running, which is crucial from the Russian perspective. And if the peace agreement will come soon, it will help Russia to maintain their presence in the region.
And do you think that, Turkey would like to see that happen, or do you think that they might intervene when it comes to, the Middle East and with all these different calculus and different interests of all the various countries?
Definitely, yes. As I said before, Russia is at the moment the main competitor of Turkey in Libya, and it was in Syria, as their influence over the situation in Syria is very limited now. Still, Russia is able to meddle into the Libyan affairs, and through Libya. They are able to influence the situation in Chad and other sub-Saharan countries. Turkey is actively counterbalancing Russian influences and trying to adapt their political agenda to the circumstances. And Turkey is able to throw its force on the scale of one side or another, as we witness increasing Turkish influence in Libya and growing role in the Syria peace building process.
Right, so taking a step back, it does look like a very highly intensive geopolitical chess game where one move could very much affect the other. Thank you so much for helping us lay down all the pieces and understanding this situation a bit more. Really appreciate it, and thanks for being with us on Eastern Express.
Thank you very much, and have a nice day.
And now we're moving on to the Eastern News Flash, a series of all the other stories from the East that you don't want to miss. The situation in the Kursk region is intensifying as Russia continues its offensive to reclaim territory. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has alleged that Russia has deployed additional North Korean troops to bolster its efforts in the region.
Although the Russians have been making some progress in the Kursk region, it has clearly not been enough to satisfy Russian leadership. Ukrainian authorities say that Moscow has now resorted to the use of North Korean troops to bolster its ranks. Their direct involvement in combat operations was not previously reported. The troops were deployed in Russia in the wake of Moscow and Pyongyang deepening military cooperation to an unprecedented level in the last few decades. Ukrainian forces continue to hold vital parts of the Kursk region. The permission to use Western-supplied arms to strike Russian territory has improved the chances of maintaining this control. Whether it will be enough in the long term to have Kursk as the ace card in potential peace negotiations is currently difficult to ascertain.
In Georgia, a constitutional crisis is escalating amidst growing political and social instability. The Georgian Dream-controlled parliament has installed a loyalist president in a highly contentious election process, further fueling tensions.
Ever since the Georgian Dream declared victory in the contested October elections, the situation in the country has been getting progressively worse. An electoral college controlled by the Georgian Dream has voted Mikhail Kavelashvili in for a 5-year term, according to the country's Central Electoral Commission chair. The opposition has denounced the election as illegitimate. Pro-EU protests are continuing across the country and in the capital of Tbilisi. They have been ongoing for several weeks. The Georgian government has come under heavy criticism from both EU and US leaders over the police's violent crackdown against the protests. Saloma Zubarishvili has refused to step down and is supported by the opposition. She has been demanding new parliamentary elections, which will lead to a constitutional showdown.
Meanwhile, in Russia, reports suggest that a covert FSB unit has been orchestrating a sweeping spy crackdown across the country over the past several years.
The FSB's Department for Counterintelligence Operations, known as the DKRO, is apparently a force to be reckoned with. In the wake of the issues following the unsuccessful initial invasion of Ukraine in 2022, the department won a power struggle within the Russian government. This victory had apparently allowed it to carry out a purge within the Russian Defense Ministry, which led to the replacement of Sergei Shoigu as the defense minister. It was initially established in 1998, and its aim was to monitor US investors and journalists who were coming to Russia in the wake of the USSR's collapse. For the last several years, however, it has also been heavily involved in targeting American citizens in the country. The DKRO was reportedly behind ramping up the arrests of US citizens to use them as trade bait for valuable Russian prisoners held abroad. Both Evan Gershkovich and Paul Whelan were to be part of this operation. Gershkovich himself has said that the DKRO unit has been involved in various campaigns in Russia since the invasion of Ukraine.
In Serbia, concerns are rising as the government warns that the United States is preparing to impose sanctions on the nation's sole gas supplier due to its Russian ownership. Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić has also indicated that the United Kingdom is expected to join in on these sanctions.
Russia's Gazprom Neft, and therefore its parent company Gazprom, has a majority ownership of Petroleum Industry of Serbia, the NIS. It is the only gas supplier to Serbia and is a majority owner of both the pipelines which transfer gas to Serbian homes and industries. Gazprom itself is infamous for being regarded as one of Russia's most powerful tools in exacting political and financial influence over its partners. Serbia itself has maintained a close relationship with Russia since Moscow's invasion of Ukraine, and that includes a high dependence on Russian energy imports. Although Serbian President Vučić claims that the US and UK are preparing sanctions against the NIS to exert political influence on Russia, neither Washington nor London have commented on these claims.
And that's all on this episode of Eastern Express. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.